What's up, guys? Welcome back to the review space, and today we take a look at a couple of fighting game franchises, probably the two most successful in their respective subgenre. One is 2D and one is 3D, and both of these prominent fighting games have been some of the most popular and best critically acclaimed of all time. And with the impending release of the crossover Street Fighter Cross Tekken video game, I think it's a good idea now. It's a good time to reflect back and take a look at the history of both of these fighting games, just a little piece of history, and compare some of the best that both fighting games have to offer. Alright, so these are the games side by side. On the left, we have the Street Fighter games, and on the right, we got the Tekken games. And yeah, let's take a look at Street Fighter first. Alright, so let's begin the Street Fighter games. First up with Capcom Classics Collection. Now, why am I talking about Capcom Classics Collection? Well, this particular collection of games, it's for the PS2, and this was released way back in 2005. It's an awesome collection of different arcade titles that was released by Capcom, mostly from the mid-late 80s and even early 90s, and Street Fighter happened to be one of them. This is awesome because if you're a Street Fighter fan, chances are you played Street Fighter 2 in the early mid-90s, and that was definitely that was really the first fighting game to really take the world by storm. Pretty much very original characters, awesome music, awesome soundtrack, great gameplay, memorable character models and designs. It was just an overall, it might be the perfect fighting game. And it's definitely the archetypical design of a fighting game. And what makes this particular collection stand out is that it has the three different Street Fighter 2, I guess, kind of updates. I mean, you have the original Street Fighter, I should say the original Street Fighter 2. It has Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, which included the four bosses. It had M. Bison, Balrog, Sagat, and Vega. And this is a great collection because, like I said, it has a bunch of great Capcom games, but it really is the Street Fighter that made me want to buy this. Hyper Fighting. This is the third Street Fighter game, which was basically a turbo version. So, because the original Street Fighter 2 was relatively slower paced, and it felt a bit more, you had to be a bit more strategic, and it wasn't as fast as the later editions. So I think Capcom wanted to speed up the gameplay a little bit, the action a little bit. So this is definitely a must-have in your Street Fighter collection. It has all three games: Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, and Hyper Fighting, which is the turbo version. And I mean, I played all these games. I owned all these games for the Super Nintendo individually back in the 90s. This was back, they would release Street Fighter 2, and then they would come up with a new game, Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, and then Hyper Fighting, which would be Turbo Edition, and so on and so forth. So, Capcom has been sort of re-releasing the same games again and again, just with updates. They've been doing that since the 90s, so when you see like Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 released maybe 9 months after the first Marvel vs. Capcom 3 came out, Capcom, it's no stranger to Capcom, they've been doing it for a long time. Anyway, it's definitely a must-have just for Street Fighter alone. And to be able to play this on a PS2 is just, the controller is awesome. PS2 has always had a really good controller for fighting games. Can't say enough about it. It's just, I love it. It's definitely one of the must-haves in my personal little library of video games. Alright, so next up we have Capcom Classics Collection Volume 2. That's right. And this one has a couple of Street Fighting games as well. And the ones that's included in it are, it has Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which has Akuma. You can fight Akuma. You can even play as him. He's like a secret character. It's sort of the final Street Fighter 2 video game from the original Street Fighter 2 lineage. It also has the original Street Fighter game, the first one, from like 1980, I think 87 or 88. I'm thinking 87. That original one, which was actually played a little bit, very differently actually, not a little bit, but played a lot differently. The gameplay was not nearly as refined, it didn't feel smooth, it felt like your character was so it was almost like this weird kind of gameplay that your character it didn't move smoothly. It was very kind of, I don't even know how to explain it because it's kind of crappy. You know, it's kind of crappy gameplay. Doing fireballs, for example, doing Hadoukens and projectiles was kind of 50-50. You know, even if you press the right buttons, you have to really time it perfectly. But I think overall, it's probably not as good in terms of Street Fighting itself compared to the first one. Like, this one has 3 different games. It's pretty much the same games, but with different features. This one only has a couple of them. One isn't really that good, which is the first one, and the second one is Super Turbo, which it's pretty difficult. I like the difficulty aspect of it. I like the fact that it's so hard, but it's really not. Like, the audio I thought kind of sucked in Super Turbo and Super Street Fighter 2 in general. I mean, the one that came out for the Super Nintendo. I think the audio, like especially Guile's voice, is the same as the announcer's voice. So they kind of, I don't know what happened with the audio where they really screwed up the volume. Like, not the volume, but the audio, the vocals. I don't know. I mean, I think overall, if I had to choose between these two, in terms of a collection, I prefer this one because it's got newer games. Like, this one has all these newer games, Strider, you know, and these, you know, Knights of the Round, all these pretty cool arcade games. This one is an overall better collection in terms of just the games as a whole. But in terms of a Street Fighter collection, I think this one is better. So, Capcom Classical, the first one, has better Street Fighter games. Alright, so the third PS2 game we have is Street Fighter Alpha Anthology. This is another collection. Again, another must-have, baby, because this has a bunch of Street Fighter Alpha games from the mid-late 90s. This one, for those who don't really understand Alpha, it was basically Street Fighter Zero in Japan. And this was supposed to be a prequel, storyline-wise, canon-wise, to the Street Fighter kind of lineage, the storyline. And it basically happened before Street Fighter 2. And it should have happened really before Street Fighter 1, but I'm not even sure about that. I don't know if it's supposed to replace Street Fighter 1, but I guess they just wanted kind of, not necessarily a reboot, but sort of a fresh look. And ready, set, fight, Alpha style. I like it because they had all these amazing art design. I like the cel-shaded look. You know, it's more anime looking. The graphics look a lot brighter, more colorful, very suited to the 90s arcade style. So the animation and the character models, the artwork basically, the art design, I liked it a lot better. The definitive Alpha collection comes together with 5 prized fighters united for the first time. Street Fighter Alpha Anthology is a perfect compilation of Street Fighter Alpha, the first one, Alpha 2. My personal favorite would be Alpha 2, Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold, and Street Fighter Alpha 3. And it even has a bonus game, Super Gem Fighter Mini Mix. It's okay. It's just a bunch of Capcom characters in a sort of a chibi, deformed looking mode. Released on consoles as Pocket Fighter. That's right, it was Pocket Fighter for the PlayStation, yes. This one came out in 2006, this collection. So, great collection of Alpha games. I mean, if this is really... I personally like Alpha. I love the Alpha series because they were so... Again, the artwork, the color, and the fighting style was a little bit more refined because you had like these, I guess, super moves and these special, you know, attacks where you can... It's basically a combo where you can attack your opponent multiple times. And they have these super moves and these super combos that you can unleash. And plus Akuma is a, you know, Akuma is a beast as usual in this game. I gotta give it to Alpha 2. I think Alpha 2 is my favorite out of this entire mix. So overall, I mean, I would have to give it to Alpha Anthology. This would be my first pick in terms of just an overall Street Fighter experience. I think the music does take a hit. Visually, it's better than Street Fighter 2. You know, the older Street Fighter 2 games, it's better visually. It's more pleasing to look at. There's more combos. There's more moves. It's a little bit more, slightly more balanced, in my opinion. It just feels more. It's more current. You know, it's more modern. And I think it overall in time it lasted a lot longer. You know, it aged well. You know, it aged a lot better than Street Fighter 2. But the biggest thing that I can say is that, you know, my biggest criticism is the music. I think that audio-wise, the music is just really lacking in the Alpha series. They just, for some reason, Street Fighter kept declining in music quality. The actual stage music, the background music, the character voices even sound so... They don't sound as impactful. It doesn't sound as amazing, as impressive, as loud, as charismatic. It doesn't sound... It doesn't have that, you know, that trademark Hadouken type of, you know, awesome sound bites that you get from the original Street Fighter 2 games. So I think the audio definitely is the biggest detractor from the Alpha series. Otherwise, it's really good, and I think if I had to rank these 3 discs, I would take this one first. If you just want Street Fighter, the best Street Fighter experience. So, and then second place would be Capcom Classics Collection, the first one, Volume 1, and then third place would be Volume 2. Again, this is just in relation to the Street Fighter experience. Alright, so that's it for the Street Fighter title so far. And right now, let's take a look at the Tekken games for the PS2. Again, PlayStation 2 rocks! Gotta love the PS2, baby. It's got so many games available for it, it's ridiculous. Look at that. Alright, first up, let's take a look at... you know what? Well, let's take a look at Tekken 4. Let's take a look at Tekken 4. Very good game. I think that this might be probably one of the more criticized Tekken games as far as the series itself. I think after Tekken 3, Tekken sort of took a hit in popularity because the PS2, there was a switch in the system. You know, it was out for, you know, the series took a break for quite a while, with the exception of Tekken Tag Tournament. But Tekken 4 itself, and it felt different. It felt like a different animal from, you know, compared to the other games. It felt kind of a different style of fighting because everything is enclosed. You're in closed arenas. It doesn't feel like, it doesn't have this wide open stages that you're usually used to in the original Tekken games. Definitely better graphics. I like the sound, I like the audio, I like the soundtrack. Some people don't like the soundtrack to this game, but I actually like it. It's kind of, it has sort of that cheesy early 2000s kind of techno, you know, late 90s electronica that Capcom is known, not Capcom, Namco is known for, sorry. Yeah, the legend continues. The Iron Fist Tournament is back with plenty of bruises to go around. All new jaw-dropping graphics, enhanced gameplay mechanics, and fearsome fighters await you. And this is the first appearance of my favorite character, Craig Marduk. Or at least one of my favorite characters. He's a beast, he's a monster, he's like an MMA volley tudo fighter, so really cool character. And there's a Tekken Force. I like the Tekken Force too. It's like a beat 'em up basically, where you're battling all these little grunts and these I guess G Corporation grunts, elite guards and stuff. Yeah, stage design looks pretty good for its time. This game came out in 2001, so it's pretty old and by today's standards, you know, it's pretty outdated, some might say, but still a really good fighting game. Alright, so next up, yeah, let's talk about Tekken Tag Tournament. Yeah, sure. This is a classic. This might arguably be the best Tekken game of all time. Because of the tag function, the tag feature, the tag mode. It has a tag mode. How crazy is that? How many Tekken games have had a tag mode? And this was sort of the first, you know, really one of the rare kind of games that actually has a tag mode that actually works. I enjoy it. I like the tag feature in this game. I think that it's very smooth. Switching out from the different characters, it's very smooth and fast and very quick, and it doesn't feel like it hinders the gameplay at all. It actually adds, I think, to the actual fighting. Really good game. I mean, good graphics for, you know, for its time. I mean, it came out in 1999. It's a late 90s game, so, and then it was later ported onto the PS2. I think that it came out really well. It's a very, very fun fighting game. Probably one of the best fighting games ever released. I mean, I think in the late 90s, Namco was really hitting that 3D fighting genre really well. They had like Soul Calibur and, you know, Tekken Tag Tournament. I think one of the main criticisms of this game, though, is that it was too much like Tekken 3. Like, visually, the art style, it didn't have anything to do with the storyline, the canon, you know, story of the Tekken series. It did have a lot of characters. It pretty much had every character in Tekken up until that point. You know, in 1999, 2000. It has 34 characters. Wow. Very good game. Awesome stage designs. Good soundtrack. The soundtrack could have been better. It's decent, you know. It's not amazing, you know. Same typical like techno stuff. Very, very good game. It's all about the tag mode. So, and then boom, this might be my favorite, Tekken 5. I have played this game so many times. This is like my favorite fighting game of all time, pretty much. It's a greatest hits, PlayStation 2. A little bit surprised because, I mean, Tekken does sell a lot, but I don't know, like, I think in the 2000s they kind of took a downturn in popularity. Like, they weren't as big compared to the 90s. I don't know what it was. Like, I think maybe it's because the lack of popularity of fighting games in general. Look at this cover. I love this. Look at this. What an awesome cover. You have a couple of new characters and then Jin Kazama, the main, you know, protagonist or whatever, the poster boy. Raven, great addition, you know. He's basically Blade from the Blade movies, like Wesley Snipes' character. He's a really well-designed character. You have Asuka Kazama here, who's basically a cousin, I guess. She could be related to Jin, I think. Or I'm not even sure. Like, I think she's related to Jun Kazama or something. One of the more original characters, or one of the original characters, not more original. But yeah, this came out in 2004, man. And this game has aged really well. Still to this day, amazing graphics, great soundtrack, one of the best fighting game soundtrack of all time, arguably the best. It's up there with Street Fighter 2. Beautiful stage designs, a lot of characters, and it's just a really visually pleasing game. It's just nice to look at. The only thing that really hinders this is this mode called Tekken Devil Within. Devil Within is just this bonus side tacked on mission. It's kind of like Tekken Force, but it's not as fun because it's too repetitive and you get to only play as Jin Kazama. And it's really boring. The same crap over and over again. But aside from that, one of the cool things too is that this has the early Tekken games. So it's got Tekken 1, Tekken 2, and Tekken 3. The arcade edition. You know what I mean? So the original arcade Tekken games. So that's pretty cool too. So this is pretty much an anthology in and of itself as well. So overall, which one, in my opinion, is the best out of Tekken 4, Tag Tournament, or Tekken 5? It's really, really close. I think by a small margin, I gotta give it to Tekken 5. And then Tekken Tag Tournament, very, very close, because this one's really fun too. And then Tekken 4. I feel like Tekken 4 isn't as good. It's still a good fighting game, but it just doesn't have as many modes, and it doesn't have as many characters, so... And the gameplay feels a little bit more restricted because of the closed walls. Alright, so comparing these awesome fighting games next to each other, these are all for the PlayStation 2. The PS2 has so many good fighting games, but this is where you really start some of the best 2D fighting games and 3D fighting games. Tekken and Street Fighter, baby. So, hey, you know, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, it's gonna be out. It's probably out by the time I upload this video. So go enjoy that game. Let me know what you think of Street Fighter Cross Tekken when you do play it, because hey, I'm a huge fighting game fan. I love both series. I love them both equally, honestly. I love Street Fighter 2 for its, you know, it came out first. You know, it's like the granddaddy of fighting games, and then Tekken sort of became like the 3D icon, you know, 3D fighting game icon. So that's it for this episode of the Review Space. Thank y'all for watching, and again, go enjoy Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Support it, man, because that game should be dope. I mean, it's got all these different characters from both franchises. I can't wait to see the reviews, and I'm definitely going to review that game, so stay tuned for that one, you know what I'm saying? And until next time, ciao!